The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. This Monday lunchtime, we're open line through till 1, so the floor's yours. Whatever you want to talk about, call 66 13 68. Text or WhatsApp on 166 177. Email studio@manxradio.com. And just a quick word to the wise. Remember, anything you hear on Mannin Line is someone's opinion, and you have the right of reply and rebuttal. Whatever, you can call at any time and have your say. So if you hear something that you don't agree with, then by all means do get in touch. You can call at the time, or you can call any other time. Call the answer phone on 682 631, or you can text, email or WhatsApp. But the important thing to remember about Mannin Line is you have the right of reply and rebuttal. And Peter's first with us today. Hello, Peter.
It's Peter Marcotte here. First of all, I didn't ring on this, but I just want to congratulate Manx Radio on these interviews they're doing with the MHKs. What my wife's doing is she's taking careful notes, and these will be very useful when people come to the door. So I think that's a job well done there. Now, I'll tell you what I was ringing about. Confidentiality. A former member of the Manx community once said, very interesting comment, he said, confidentiality in the Isle of Man lasts for 15 minutes until after the meeting closed. Well, I think Britain needs to learn a little bit. It seems almost like that in Britain, because I was rather startled to read in the paper this morning. There's a meeting going on in Ukraine, and I believe it's already been said, I think by no less, or it's attributed to no less than the Prime Minister, that they're going to give Ukraine a site of what amounts to, I suppose, very secret British manufacturing of certain weapons. Now, I would have thought, to start with, given the fact that Putin is already making a lot of threatening noises, isn't it folly of the first order to start talking like this? I mean, in the Second World War, there was a very famous slogan that said, careless talk costs lives. And I think that really needs to be resurrected, don't you?
They also said loose lips sink ships as well, Peter, didn't they?
Yes, and you see, I can't understand it. I was absolutely amazed to read this. Similarly, I saw an item in the press not too long ago about where certain military wear was manufactured. And I mean, that's crazy too. If I was working there, I should feel very insecure now of it being made known. You keep that quiet, surely. And I have to say, I'm just amazed. My father was in the Second World War, and he was, well, we never found out exactly what he did do, because he was on some sort of secret thing. He was a highly intelligent man, and he wouldn't ever tell us what he did, which was quite sensible. And right to the end of his life, he never once revealed. He just said he was on signals, and that was as far as he went. And he never let out, even long after the war. He never spoke about it, and I think that was extraordinarily sensible. He took the view that with it being secret at the time, that the secret stayed, and he shouldn't say anything. And I do admire that, and I do wish that some of the people nowadays would take a bit of a leaf out of that book.
Different generation, Peter.
It's, yeah, do remember that it was actually by keeping your lips closed that against a formidable foe, we actually won. I'm not sure, I wouldn't like to be too entirely sure what's going to happen now if they don't sort of smarten themselves up a bit. That's my thought.
All right, we appreciate it, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. 12 now, and Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Well, the weather's holding out there, but I think it's going to change soon, isn't it?
Well, tomorrow overnight, I believe it is, so they're concertinaing everything up, aren't they?
Yeah, you can tell there's a change, isn't it? Even the light is slightly different at the moment.
Well,
so
and the fact
feel
that...
like we're just...
Yeah, it's going to be dark just before 9 o'clock tonight, and let me tell you, first thing in the morning, it feels like autumn at the moment.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right there. Yesterday's Manx Radio News article titled "More than 30 hospice staff opt for voluntary redundancy or reduced hours." That's almost a quarter of the full-time staff number at the hospice, Andy. There's already been a reduction in physiotherapy and psychiatric services at hospice, and these recent redundancies make the situation even worse. And I think this is bound to adversely affect the resources, at least, if not the standards at the hospice. And I don't know, I mean, from an ethical perspective, in my opinion, hospice should be fully funded by the health service, especially as assisted dying has been confirmed to be fully funded if it receives royal assent. I just don't see why the hospice is being left to hang out to dry, effectively.
Well, at the moment we don't know, because obviously the new House of Keys will have something to say about it. But as you say, I mean, what's happened? I mean, forgive me, but I'm paraphrasing everything. What's happened is in the past 30-odd years, there have been a lot more charities arrive on the Isle of Man. And I think that's since the UK National Lottery, because to get anything from the lottery, you've normally got to be a charity. So there are lots. And whereas, the hospice was preeminent, and things like Manx Blind Welfare were there as well, and the RNLI and what have you. But hospice has suffered from, bluntly, less donations and less... people not leaving as much in their will at the moment, and of course have kept that fantastic service that they always have done in the background. And it's not like the hospice never bang the drum and shout about what they do. They don't need to, because everybody it passes the good word on for them. But I mean, as you say, that's a lot of people who are taking the redundancy process. So we'll see. That what they said was this wasn't because of financial pressures forced upon them. So you wonder why then?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've heard recently about, pets should be beings and not possessions. So we want to get more rights for pets, but we're letting people who have paid into the National Health Service all their lives and they're at their most vulnerable, we're just letting a quarter of the workforce go after basically moving out from their the physiotherapy and the psychiatric. I mean, how long is this going to be? And, I've said many times, even though I'm against the assisted dying bill, I can totally understand why people would want it. I mean, it's the fact of how are you going to stop the taps from being undone like all the other jurisdictions have had, where you get 20-something-year-olds being signed off by a psychiatrist to be euthanized immediately. But one of the things that is that the assisted dying people say that they want to have a choice. Well, that choice is diminishing on the other side, isn't it? Massively. If you just lost nearly a quarter of the workforce, where's that choice disappearing to?
Well,
what we're going to be left with?
Well, on a positive note, I mean, DHSC and the health minister, Claire Christian, has set out in writing their support for an increased funding from 2027. So the final decision hasn't been made. It rests with Treasury. There's a business case for Treasury, and we don't know what the outcome of that is until February of next year. So really, it's a holding pattern at the moment, and we'll wait to see. But I mean, it goes without saying that the Treasury has a big reservoir of immense goodwill from the Manx people.
But I mean, just from a practical point of view, if you look at the latest figures with all the overspends for Manx Care, Manx Care's budget a year, correct me if I'm wrong, is 100 times the hospice, or the hospice's 1/100th of the spend on Manx Care. Surely Treasury can find. I mean, they've nearly blown that much on a blooming EIA for the Erie Stane wind farm. and yet we can't look after our most vulnerable elderly people, or not always elderly. I mean, people get cancers and all sorts. And, I'm just reminded of, I don't agree with some of the things that Andy Burnham does, but I do agree with what he said on the 29th of July at the BBC. Palliative care and social care should be fixed before the assisted dying debate moves forward. Well, should we copy and paste that then? Because we seem to copy and paste a lot from the UK. Why are we not actually digging our heels in and saying we are not going to allow hospice to fall? Because quarter of the workforce being kicked out, basically. I mean, how long can you keep going like this?
Well, I'm guessing that they know what they're doing, and they're fine, okay at the moment. They're running as they should do. Otherwise, something would have been said. But they all know what the situation is. It's going to be February next year. So in the meantime, as you say, those people have gone. We don't know what the diminution in service, whether or not that's having a practical impact on people at the moment. I mean, you would think that it would do, but we haven't yet heard any detail. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. All right. Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Good to hear from you. It's following this recent cost-cutting review that the hospice has confirmed over 30 staff have taken voluntary redundancy or reduced their hours. The cuts are across areas of the operation: fundraising, catering, support services, admin, nursing, healthcare assistants and therapies. But hospice said this is not because of financial pressures. So you wonder why it is then. Let's note in, this is from Bob, who said, Peter's father would probably have signed the Official Secrets Act that would have required him to remain silent. All of the workers at Bletchley Park were sworn to secrecy for a period of 40 or 50 years, says Bob. Well, actually, Bob, I'll tell you a story. I used to work in the home counties. In fact, I worked for a radio station in Bedford, which is just up the road from Bletchley. And at the time that the British Post Office telecommunications bit was privatised and it became BT, Bletchley Park was held in their property portfolio. They'd kind of inherited it. So it was owned by British Telecom. And the bean counters at British Telecom thought, well, we've got this big piece of land on the south of Milton Keynes. It's worth an absolute fortune, so let's flog it. And at that point, everybody broke silence because nobody quite knew what Bletchley Park was, and Bletchley Park was what they owned. So everybody then started saying what had happened, and that was purely to rebuff British Telecom flogging the land off and building a housing estate. And that's the reason that Bletchley Park is now saved and restored and a tourist attraction, because all those people who were, as you say, sworn to secrecy suddenly piped up because they can't jail them all. Thank you, Bob. Good to hear from you. I want to go to Robert. Hi, Robert.
Good day.
Brow Guramayad.
Ah, brilliant. I won you. Okay, so I was thinking about doing a course up at college for web design, and apparently they don't do them.
They used to, didn't they?
Well, they did about 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, but it's just a basic course in computers or a degree or something. You have to study it from the the ones and zeros point of perspective. They don't do a course. I'm just amazed. It's like if you're not anyone unless you're on the web these days. So I mean. So
you want to be a web developer, do you?
Well, I already am, kind of. I just want to brush up on my skills and get a certificate.
My word. Okay. Well, I hadn't heard that, but thanks for availing us.
Well, I wish we could get one. I wish we could get one.
Oh, maybe somebody can tell us then. Is there a course for web developers on the Isle of Man? And if so, where is it? Okay, Robert, good to hear from you. Thanks for that. The former Treasury Minister is urging politicians not to brand the NHS unaffordable and push for more private healthcare. Alex Allinson, of course, he was a GP, the good doctor, has represented Ramsey for the last 10 years, but isn't standing in next month's election. In the final budget of the last administration, the Health Department had a budget of $232.5 million. This year, healthcare has got a budget of $412 million. Get that? 232, final budget of the last administration. This year, 412 million. Dr. Allinson, about the challenge of the rising cost that healthcare presents.
I mean, when you look at the amount of money that's been put into those key areas for our young people and our people in general through healthcare, it's been absolutely unprecedented. But what I think has not been achieved is people seeing the real benefits of that. And I think because of all the firefighting, we haven't been able to achieve the outcomes for individual people that we should have done. We have to be realistic in terms of people's expectations, in terms of what they'll get and how much it will cost. I also think on a small island we need to accept that we can't do everything here, and it will cost more to do the things that we do here, and we will need to send people across for care. The reason for that is that medicine has got far more complicated. The human body hasn't changed very much at all, even since I was in medical school, but the things we can do to it has got amazingly complicated. You know, MRI scans, palliative chemotherapies, treatments for diseases that weren't really on the books originally, even 10 years ago, with some of the new syndromes being found and the new treatments being developed for them. What I think is really important is that we don't, as some politicians have suggested, say the NHS is no longer affordable and we should move to a different model of insurance-based systems or private healthcare. The NHS will work. It has worked. It has done our nation a huge amount of good over the last 50 years, and certainly the UK. And it is one of the most efficient ways of providing healthcare. But it needs to involve patients more, it needs to put them at the forefront, and it needs to be primary care based and prevention led.
And that's the core of the matter. We're getting better at diagnosing, we're getting better at treating, but all this costs money. So the more we have an appetite for living longer and getting better and solving the problem of diseases and syndromes, the more it's going to cost. Well, bluntly, because there's money in it. Big pharma and the big companies that make all the health service machinery and what have you, the people that make all the scanners and the X-ray machines and everything else, all the diagnostic stuff, they know there's money in it. So, of course, it's going to go up. It would be fatuous to suggest that the cost of healthcare is ever going to go down. What do you think? Is Bonzo on now? Hi, Bonzo.
Yes. Hospice, first of all. How much does Manx Care actually put into hospice? Because I believe that Manx Care purchases services from hospice.
I can't answer that. What I can tell you is that Manx Care does all the laundry for hospice. They provide the laundry services.
Mm-hmm. But I think Manx Care also buys some palliative services from them. So I'm not quite sure how much that goes into the pot. But as for hospice itself, remind me of the figures. I think it's 15 million. I think a year hospice costs.
About that, yes.
It's about that, yes. So if we bring that in totally into health service, well, that's another 15 million quid we've got to find. On top of the other bits of millions of quid that we've got to find. So here we go again, which I've been saying about this kind of thing a lot. God knows how long. In that it is either we get more money, or we decide what services we're not going to have. Simple as that. And the ways that we can get more money are expanding the economy. Yes, fine, but we've expanded the economy before and found that we still don't have money for services, strangely enough. Wonder why that is. Oh, I can tell you why. Because, of course, we have a taxation system that is geared towards the top 20% of incomes, and especially towards the top 5% of incomes. And essentially the rest of the tax base have to go around paying for it. There is a large piece of tax income that we just forego in order to allow people to have business jets, yachts, sports cars, etc., etc., etc. Now, that makes the Isle of Man a attractive place to those sorts of people to come in and bring their wealth into the island, which would be, at first sight, great. But does that wealth really go into the island? This is the point. Yes, it sits around in various organisations being managed, and people charge fees for that and stuff. But does it actually go into the Manx economy as such to help us provide services, or indeed diversify the economy, start to make various new industries from which we can provide livelihoods and, of course, raise taxes from? So what we need, as many have been saying for so long, and indeed Peter Washington, the MLP candidate for Douglas North, I was listening to him on Friday on the general election candidate interview, and I was so flabbergasted that he's actually the first candidate that I have heard in this election who actually mentioned taxation and reforming the tax system. And that is the way that we have to go, because we have problems of not only what we want to do at the moment, just maintaining those services are going up via inflation, etc. So we get less and less and less for the amount of tax that we levy.
Okay.
But also, of course, the threat of the budget in the UK just after our election, which then may halve our VAT income overnight, so that all the manifesto pledges of everyone who had been just elected into the Keys in the previous month in September will be as nothing. They can tear their manifestos up and flush them down the toilet.
Since you mentioned Peter Washington, I have to point out that also standing in Douglas North, David Ashford, Jason Cheetham, Damien Chappelli, Dennis Staunton, Janet Tomoney, and Hugo Yates. So, have you got an answer then as to why hitherto nobody has espoused this philosophy to any great degree or to any great force or effectiveness?
Vested interests, as Peter Caron would have told you, or may indeed continue to tell you if he's returned to the Keys in September. There are a lot of people who tend to be in those kind of influential positions, and indeed thence get elected to Keys, who are very much for maintaining the status quo. Why do you think nothing happens in Keys? Because nobody really wants anything to happen in Keys. There are a few, but the majority of them don't want change. They want the system which keeps enriching them, as servants of the vested interests that support them.
So you think of course, this started back in the 1960s with Ronald Garvey, the Lieutenant Governor, who pointed out to Tynwald at the time that they didn't have to charge super tax, and that's when the first wave of that's where all these 1960s bungalows come from, when the first wave of So you think that policy enacted when Ronald Garvey was Lieutenant Governor, you think has run out of steam?
Oh, yes. That was part of the overseas territories and Crown dependencies expansion that kind of began into that kind of financial operations, which began in the 1950s as a way of getting around exchange controls. But that then grew, and then with the 80s and with the big bang in the finance sector, that produced all sorts of financial advantages for Crown dependencies and offshore offshore territories. So they then, went ahead and, right, fine, this is the way we've got to go. And that worked. And that works so long as the UK finds it advantageous to do so. So even when Labour came in 1997, they thought, oh yes, fine, that's okay, it helps the city do what it wants, and then the City of London will earn us lots of money, and then we can take some tax, and then we can build hospitals and do all the rest of the things that we want to do. The only problem was, when the financial crash, of course, happened, 2008, 2009, then the government woke up to the fact that, well, we were taking advantage of the VAT system as constructed. We weren't doing anything illegal. We just knew how to play the system. And we were getting a lot of money. And obviously Alistair Darling then looked at that and thought, well, UK is broke. Why should these people have a nice life? Sorry, I want that money. And there is the problem that we have now. That has gone on for the past decade and a half or more. And people say, oh, well, yes, we're now making more money out of VAT than we did before the crash. Well, it's more in money terms. It's nowhere near as much as real terms. You need to double it in order to have the same financial effect.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Oh, and thank you, by the way, Bonzo. And I got to say that also standing in Onken, Rob Callister, Gabriella Corkish, Julie Edge, Rachel Glover and Oliver Lockwood. Thanks, Bonzo.
Why did I didn't mention Onken.
No, you mentioned Peter Karen.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Thank you for calling.
Okay. Sorry. Bye.
Okay, 28 minutes before 1.
Big Red Storage in Tremode and Ronaldsway offers secure self-storage units in various sizes with ground floor options and 24/7 access. Check offers and prices using our online space calculator at bigred.im or call 640040.
Drive smarter, drive more reliable, drive a great deal at Mannin Motors. With a superb range of cars for every budget, always available. And if we don't have it, we'll source it. Plus, servicing, valeting and prestige detailing too. Mannin Motors, Richmond Hill, Douglas. Find us on Facebook or call 420 420. That's 420 420. Drive a better bargain at Mannin Motors.
Visit Ramsey Art Gallery for a fabulous range of top brand watches and stunning gold and silver jewellery, gifts for all occasions, and of course our gallery of prints and original artworks. Find all this and more at Ramsey Art Gallery, Jewellers and Engravers, opposite the RNLI shop.
There's monkeys and meerkats, penguins galore. You can meet with a panda, owls, lemurs and more.
The Currachs Wildlife Park is open 7 days a week. So book your tickets and experiences online now at currachswildlifepark.im.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Bell-Dawn bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
Despite the hastily watered-down rhetoric on a population target of 100,000 people, that figure remains as a government ambition on which future planning is based. So why aren't Key's candidates talking about it? Do they or don't they support this aspiration? Is it even achievable when global demographers are predicting dramatic falls in population and deaths in the Isle of Man far exceed births? And whatever happened to the housing crisis? Was it real? Loads to discuss on Agenda this evening at 6:30pm on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. Are our young people voting with their feet and abandoning thought of a life here?
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
John says green energy is the number one future for the Isle of Man. No carbon footprint, so we have no reliance on the UK, all in a good way, says John. And a message in from Andy who just said, do we know if any prospective MHKs would vote to change the Isle of Man to a secular society? Not heard of anybody, Andy. Also, when's the cut-off date for when you can accurately describe potential MHKs as candidates that could be voted for rather than many at the moment who haven't submitted official papers? Well, if they haven't submitted official papers, they've got a little less than 2 days, because this coming Wednesday, the 26th, is the candidate nomination period closure. So the candidate nomination period closes on Wednesday the 26th. That's the day after tomorrow. And David's with us now. Hello, David. I think he's on blighted line 2 again. And let's find Richard with us now. Hello, Richard.
Good afternoon. If you drive from Port Ellen to Port St Mary to Castletown, every house and all the people in all the houses in all those areas, they are equivalent to the number of people who are on a waiting list for more than 52 weeks. And this represents a huge waste of money, which nobody seems to talk about, in that we now have twice as many people on the waiting list as we should have. If we had less people on the waiting list, we would be saving a lot of money. There seems to be very little emphasis on the cost of these waiting lists. The cost of these waiting lists is horrendous. There's the care that has to be provided to the people that are on the list. There's the drugs that have to be provided. For some, there's the benefits. There's a loss of revenue because they can't work. The extra ailments they get while they're on the waiting list. I'll bet that about a third of the people going to A&E are people who are already on a waiting list, going to A&E, probably because their condition has worsened or they've developed a secondary condition as a result of being on the waiting list so long, maybe lying in bed and bed sores and goodness knows what. And some of those people will have to be admitted to the hospital. This is a huge amount of costs involved that nobody seems to think about or consider.
Well, it's always down to money, isn't it, Richard? It's always down to, as Chris Stockport said the other day, everything costs money. So at what point do you spend that? I mean, you're intimating that if we use money to bring down the waiting list, so that'll save us money in the long run, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And keep them down.
Of course, I mean, we mentioned the amount of money that we're now spending, almost £500 million, Manx Care's budget for health and social care. It's never, ever going to go down. It just simply, because wages will always go up, there'll be more and more technology that's available. So, what's your view about the long-term future of Manx Care and the money that we pay from DHSC to keep it going?
I think we need people who really believe that they can get those waiting lists down. It's not a huge problem. It's not a huge hospital. It's a relatively small hospital, and it's a problem that should be solvable. But there seems to be a lot of buzzy thinking. When do you last hear anybody talking about the costs of the waiting lists?
I'll be honest with you, you're the only person I've heard talk about it.
Well, I think it should be much more widespread, discussed and considered.
OK, all right. Richard, we appreciate your call. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
22 minutes before 1. I think we've found David now. Hello, David.
I can hear you, Andy. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, thank you.
Magic. I'm talking about the future now. It's about all these students now that have passed their exams, and there will be some of them who have not made the grade. And I'm going to kick in. Hopefully they'll consider an apprenticeship course at the college. Somebody was talking about it earlier, about the college. I'd love to get you to talk to the head up there, or education, and say, what is there for the future of our students, our younger people in the Isle of Man, to keep them here, and start apprenticeships like plumbing, electricity, electrical, plasterers, brickies, the lot, all the way down to the bottom of the scale, really, because it's good money, whether we like it or not. If you can't get in a minute, get a plumber or electrician if you need one.
Yeah, I just wonder, why is there this kind of perceived snobbery about people who become tradesmen? Why is this? Why do we seem to value academic stuff above somebody being able to do some plumbing and to mend a gutter and what have you? That's a big need in society. Part of one of the definitions of good society is efficient plumbing. I didn't say that. Yeah. It was Noel Coward who said that. A good society needs efficient plumbing. It's healthy for a start. So I wonder why there's this kind of snobbery about it.
Well, maybe we don't advertise it enough. or they go to, because they go to, the last year of school, don't they? They have they go up to the college and do tester courses on even painter and decorating, before I forget, because I've got a colleague who does painting and decorating, and I'm waiting for my house to be done. But anyway, I'm waiting for that for a while. But they need to examine what goes on and what the wages are like. And you know, the biggest defaulter in this is the Isle of Man government. I'd love you to get on to Tim Krugel. He's not a candidate anymore, so we can say that, and say to him, how many apprentices are we running in the DOI? We used to have loads at the time being, because when they come out of their courses, sometimes it's a 4-year term, they go on to either being employed themselves or go on to other things.
What did they do? What were their jobs, their apprenticeships within DOI?
The DOI, well, we used to have blacksmiths. Mechanics is the top one, because don't forget, Andy, now all the cars in the future, when I'm gone, are going to be electric. And somebody's got to make sure we have big mains, don't we? Like down at the sea terminal, what is it, a 60-watt output there? What's that for a big bus we're going to get in the future? By the way, I've just got to talk that, but we were down, we took a group of people to Ballasalla last Friday. Yeah. And we went to the church tea rooms in Ballasalla. So you've got a fan club down there. So you need to say hello to them, because I said I'll come on sometime and remind them they have a coffee morning there on a Friday between 10 o'clock and 12. And that's what everybody should be doing, is getting out while the country's good. And just to give you an update, while we were talking, I've got 78% of my batteries. I'm producing 3.47 kilowatts. And I'm only getting 9p. That's me.
All right. Thanks for calling. Thank you. It's 18. Cheers. Now it's 18 minutes before 1. This is Mannin Line on Manx Radio. The UK NHS spent billions to establish a single patient record without success. Manx Care spent millions on ICT systems over the last 5 years without showing improvements. It's already predicted an £8 million overspend for this year, and somebody needs to be named and held responsible for the delivery of an Isle of Man single patient record within budget. Well, you heard Chris Stockport last week say not anytime soon. Millions are spent on silly surveys, yet the government can't help the hospice, says Alan. Apparently, James said none of the core services at hospice will stop. The saving is affecting extra services that are run elsewhere and don't need to be made by the hospice, such as physio, occupational therapy. Can I just say, says 696, the hospice does a magnificent job. It's well needed in the community. Yeah, how do we let a charity get so big that it needs £5.5 million a year to run? It's a massive burden to put on Manx people every year in charitable donations. As money is more tight and donations seem to be less handed out, it has to one day affect hospice. And not only hospices, but other charities. Hospice would have received a lot of donations through wills. Yet now older people have to pay for their own care in care homes, and all that money is no longer being donated to charities. So 30 workers having their hours cut or taking redundancy is, as I see it, only the start of a situation getting worse over the next few years. £5.5 million to run just one charity is a massive ask from the public every year. My brother passed away in hospice, and I hope the government helps them out, says 696. I don't know what the story is, but hospice always used to benefit from extremely rich people leaving lots of money in their wills. And you'll remember Bill Scholl and the Scholl Foundation. Well, certainly the Scholl Foundation used to give an awful lot of money to many charities on the Isle of Man, and hospice was just one of them. But obviously Mr. Scholl has since passed on. I think Dr. Allinson needs to get to Marks and Spencer and buy himself some fresh grapes, as the sour ones he's been chomping are making him bitter. Thank you for that, Francis. Have you got any thoughts on what Dr. Allinson was saying about the fact that he thinks that we shouldn't be talking about private healthcare? Well, I don't think the idea has been that the whole thing is privatised. But what do you think about things like Jersey? What Jersey do? It's £20 for a GP appointment. Now, that stops people not turning up for GP appointments, believe you me. If you have to pay, even if you don't turn up to a GP appointment. What about something like that? Putting up the cost of prescriptions, perhaps? What do you think? At some point, something has got to happen. Whether there's more money for Manx Care or Manx Care cuts its cost. And it's supposed to deliver costs and presumably has. The trouble is, everything else is going up exponentially. The cost of... I mean, we always hear about, there may be industrial action, whether it's the nurses, whether it's the doctors, whether it's the consultants. So the cost of labour will go up and up and up. More technology will be around. That will go up and up and up. It is rumoured that the hospital isn't big enough. So we may have to have some form of extension to the hospital. Where's that going to go? Is that going to be the end of the Millennium Oakwood? Who knows? And the one that's always touted is paying for parking at the hospital. At the moment, part of our civilised society on the Isle of Man is that if you go to hospital or if you visit somebody in hospital, you don't need to worry. You don't have that lingering worry in the back of your mind that you may have to pay for car parking. In the UK, it's horrible. It's horrible. You visit anybody in hospital in the UK, it costs a fortune to park, and if you overstay your time, you can get clamped. Costs you 50, 70, 100 quid to get out. Part of our civilised society is that come whatever time of day, morning, noon and night, you park for free at Noble's Hospital and, of course, at Ramsey Cottage Hospital. But somebody somewhere may be thinking that perhaps that should change. What do you think?
Check out the Groudle Glen Railway summer timetable for some great days out. Visit the Clifftop Tea Rooms and Sales Emporium, book a special steamed tea and join our free family train spotting challenge. Hop on the line that goes uphill to the sea, the Groudle Glen Railway. For times, see ggr.org.uk or visit on Facebook.
The previous message was brought to you by QVH, the island's premier serviced offices and co-working space in the heart of Douglas. Call 639 940 for more information or visit qvhpremierofficespace.com.
The Ramsey Garden Centre sale is now on, featuring a huge range of garden items at vastly reduced prices. Don't delay. Grab a garden bargain now. There has never been a better time to visit Ramsey Garden Centre. Open 7 days a week on Albert Road, Ramsey.
Now is your chance to recognise inspirational individuals and groups making a real difference on the Isle of Man with the Heroes of Man Awards, brought to you by A Little Piece of Hope charity. From quiet acts of kindness to outstanding community work, nominate your hero or heroes at alittlepieceofhope.com/nominations. That's alittlepieceofhope.com/nominations. Nominations close Sunday the 30th of August, with the awards ceremony late January 2027. Details coming soon. This advert has been kindly supported by Cayman National Bank in the Isle of Man, rewarding relationships built on trust, and your nation's station, Manx Radio.
You get more than you think, but all that you need when you
shop local with EVF.
Because your local EVF filling station isn't just a place for fuel, it's where you can get delicious food to go, chilled drinks, wines and beers, barbecue and summer essentials, from ice creams to surfboards, plus a great range of local products. Ellen Van In Fuels. Fill up, fuel up, and get all you need to go. Open till late.
Shop local with EVF.
In the run-up to the House of Keys general election on Thursday the 24th of September, we want to give you as much information as possible about who's standing in your constituency to help you decide who to vote for. So, starting on Monday the 31st of August, we'll be hosting our live constituency debate programmes at Studio One. Every candidate standing will be invited to take part, and you could be a member of the audience. Head over to Manx Radio's election mini-site to find the date of your constituency debate and apply for your free ticket. You can find all the details at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster man, good afternoon. I'd rather spend £15 million on hospice than funding people to end their life, says 404. And I'm dismayed to hear, says 094, I'm dismayed to hear that the public meeting of the Manx Care Board scheduled for the 3rd of September has been cancelled. Therefore, will we deny the opportunity to scrutinise the financial position of Manx Care before the election, and then most likely not until October or November at the earliest. I can't understand what the connection is between a scheduled public meeting of the Manx Care Board and the general election. No transparency evident, says 094. And this is Fran. Oh, Fran's on his soapbox here. When Manx Radio interviews prospective male MHKs, don't they ask if they are currently a practising Freemason? Well, I think women can be Freemason as well, so, Fran, I have to say, 1 in 2 of every messages I get from Fran is about Freemasonry. Fran, you're not a Freemason, are you? It's not a double bluff, is it? I was in Onken at the weekend. There are lots of empty sites that will be ideal for a camper van park. I've just recently purchased a camper van, and Onken is the perfect location to take grandchildren. Molly's Kitchen. Well, I wouldn't park on there, John. Molly's site is private land, so that would be trespassing, wouldn't it? Brian called to say he's a great supporter and likes what we do, but he feels Mannin Line should only be on twice a week because people listening off the Isle of Man don't get a good impression. Well, there's one way to get around that, Brian, and that's for you to call, and then you can give a good impression, yeah? Or is that somebody else's job?
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
A new app's been launched on the Isle of Man that looks to change the way taxis operate by incorporating an Uber-style experience for customers. An Uber one is where you do it through an app. It happens across and right around the world. The app is called One Island, and it offers bus information, updates on the boats and flights, and links to local news stories. Where are they getting that news from, then? Darren Barkley is one of the founders.
Where did the idea for the app come from?
So it's an idea I've been sitting on for nearly 10 years, but executing on for the last 2 years. And it was an idea born of observing how fractured digital life is on the Isle of Man. So there's a lot of different platforms, different vendors, a lot of reliance still on print material. And so as a long-time developer, I thought that I could work to bring all that content together and make it a lot more consumable for the general public.
So I've had a play around on it this morning, look at different features of it. You can see buses, you can see the latest news, see what the weather is, you can see delays on the ferries and the airports. And what sort of appetite do you think is there on the island for all that to be in one place?
I think people are used to social media, they're used to having their favourite platforms, but it is quite a chore to visit each of these different spaces and keep up to date. So by unifying them into a single source of truth, which is what we want to be for the Isle of Man, we think that One Island can offer a lot of convenience, and then built on top of that, a lot of modern utility that people would expect from applications.
Part of the app that is launching, I think today, as we see it, is that you're doing like a taxi service. Where did the idea come from for that?
So yeah, one of our co-founding developers is also a taxi driver. He's a second-generation driver. It's been in his family for 33 years. And we identified an opportunity there to modernize the local taxi service. And so we designed and developed a portal to allow for modern ride-sharing functionality that people might expect from Uber or Grab or similar services.
There we are, ride-sharing functionality. What does that mean? I don't know. Anyway, this new app is called One Island, and we'll find out what the taxi drivers think about this, although one particularly seems to be into it. Any thoughts on this? The new Uber-style experience for customers. I think that's where taxi drivers compete to charge the smallest price for the journey. Is that right? I think it's going to catch on the Isle of Man. There's a BBC Web News story about the wind farm impacting the election. It says the Isle of Man could get 57 million a year and could get £100 million cable feed to the Isle of Man and could get 10% off domestic bills, says Gaz. Orsted have done many renewable schemes. Shouldn't they be giving us gives ifs and maybes and could and should unless there's something that is hidden? Well, we don't know, because we don't hear from them that often. Whenever there's the mention of the Manx Care budget, people seem to have forgotten that we're currently paying a 1% health surcharge via our taxes. It's getting more and more difficult to park at the hospital. There should be some way of checking whether people genuinely have an appointment or are visiting rather than using it as a park and ride. Well, we always hear this. We always hear people say, two cars drive into it at 8 o'clock in the morning and one drives out. And the hospitals say they've checked it. They've had people watching. They've been checking registration plates, and it doesn't happen. Of course, now you can park over at Vaggers, at Vagabonds Rugby Club, the Overspill car park, although it's a bit of a schlep up the hill. However, the free car park at Nobles Hospital is one of the measures of our society. I mean, as is the diminishing amount of free parking on Douglas Promenade. Free parking, being able to, the fact that the driver pays the insurance and the road tax and VAT and fuel duty all the time. So it's an ongoing contributor to the national coffers. Free parking is part of our society. What do you think about this then? On the subject of animals being property, says Tony C. We're looking at this last week. Do you remember? Animals are beings, sentient beings. I looked up the definition of the word property. Property is something, says Tony C., that's owned by an individual or a group and can be a physical thing or an abstract idea, like song lyrics, copyright and what have you. So if a dog isn't property, then surely it means that you don't own it. So if you can't own a dog, breeders can't sell them, you can't pay your dog license, you don't get prosecuted for anything because you don't own a dog, says Tony C. I'll go away and think about that. Right, tomorrow, Chamber of Commerce is on. We'll see what they think about the state of the economy and the election. That's it. Thanks to Howie on the phones today. Enjoy your Monday.
WINT